Everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. Today's EVE Talk could be decently interesting because CCP is going to nerf the Rorqual by around 33%. So this should give a little boost to minerals and ores, although I think that the patch is only coming on Tuesday. So at the moment people are probably still mining like crazy into Rorquals, especially those guys right up there, the goons. I've heard a lot about their massive mining operations that are going on at the moment. Another thing that I quickly want to mention as well is that right after the patch, so I think the patch is on the 12th, and then from the 13th on, or is it the 14th? Let me see. The patch is on the 13th normally, and then from the 14th on, for the rest of the month, there will be a gift that will come into your redeemable items. But it's a gift that only lasts 24 hours, and so you have to log in every day if you want to grab all the gifts that CCP is going to give you for this holiday season, and that should start the day after the patch. I think it's pretty important to keep that in mind. Of course, we are here for the market, and so we are going to get started, as always, with plex, and that's going to be at minute 25. 125. Okay. So in the 5 minutes it took me to prepare, a couple of plex were bought out. So we are at 1,065,000,000 for the sellers in Cheetah, and 1,011,000,000 for the buyers in Cheetah. Here is the price chart. Let's put that at around 6 months, which I think is around here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, around 6 months. There we go. So you can see the hesitation is still holding on. The daily average is still trending down towards 1 billion, 5-day moving average and 20-day moving average, basically moving in tandem, but the downtrend is still here despite a few moments of hesitation, but basically it is looking more and more like here the end of October, early November, right before I think the Ascension expansion, the peak of plex will turn out to have been here. Yeah, this should be Ascension right here. So I think that this will turn out to become the top here, just late October, early November. And now with this hesitation, as people play the game for a few weeks, a few months, they do sometimes decrease in numbers. So this is a trend that may start a little bit sooner because of the early expansion this year. Unless we have like a really big war, I think that all of this could start to taper off in a classical fashion. It's something that happens all the time in EVE Online. You do get a peak around an expansion, especially a winter expansion, but after that you do have a gradual decline in activity in the game, and also a gradual decline in plex prices, which from my historic perspective have yielded buy opportunities around May, June, something like that for bottom prices. So let's see if this trend will hold up, but that could mean if nothing special happens, you sometimes get a bump for FanFest or for a big war, but if nothing all too special happens here, I think we are in for a low and long downward spiral for plex prices from this point on. We'll see if it becomes true. One request that I'm going to honor here is to also take a look outside of Cheetah, especially for the plexes, because well, there are a few trade hubs in perimeter that are taking over a lot of business, and it's a pretty good suggestion, because as you can see here, people are selling plexes inside perimeter Planet 5 trade hub for 1,038,000,000. That's a pretty substantial drop from 1,064,65, which we're having here in Cheetah, and the buyers are at 1,016,000. So if you want to maybe have a little bit of a cheaper plex to buy, you can go to this trade hub. If you want to sell it straight to a sell order, that's a little bit better, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 1,011,000, like 5 million more. You can go to the trade hub. I'm a little bit surprised. It's indeed pretty massive. Look at that. It is competing with Cheetah, but one thing to keep in mind as well: the more stuff is being traded inside this trade hub, the more likely it will at some point become that it could become a target for someone to try and destroy. It's not going to cost you, I think, to redeem your items from the safety system, but it could of course inconvenience you if you have a lot of stuff there. Still very good suggestion there. It's something that I will definitely try to do every week, at least for plex, because I think plex are just easy to sell inside the straight up, since technically you never need to move your plex. So then maybe we'll touch on a few other things once in a while to see what they're trading for in the perimeter trade hub there. Next up, multiple pilot trading certificates. 1,100,000 for the sellers, 1 billion for the buyers. Much smaller market, but moving very similarly to plex, going down towards 1 billion. Average daily price here, again 5-day moving average below 20-day moving average, slight downtrend, peak around the early November, end of October region. So that's basically a mirror image of what's happening with plex, and of course it does pretty much the same thing. It just allows the second character on your account to train its skills. Pilot body resculpt next, that is a little bit different. We can see the 5-day moving average crossing the 20-day moving average. Averaging here 280 million, 290 million for the sellers, 260 million for the buyers. You can see that there's basically nobody selling these at the moment, which I think meant a little bit of an uptick in median daily prices. But overall, of course, this is a very small market, its own little market, and since EVE Online is mostly about spaceships, not that many people go for the body resculpts. So I would say only try to go for this in a very small manner. If you see these in a very good position to try and create a few body resculpts, I think you need Aurum for that, and you mathematically make a profit from that. You can of course try to sell a few, but here keep in mind maybe 9 or 5 even as a daily average in volumes is what we're talking about here. So a very small market, not something that is going to make you rich either. Next up here we've got the skill extractors that have still not existed for a year, so let's extend that a little bit. And here once again you can see the very strong correlation with plex prices, the peak at the end of October, early November, and here now the gradual decline in price. 5-day moving average, 20-day moving average are moving closer, so it looks like there's maybe a bit of hesitation, but in general I'm reading this as the start of a slow and long decline as well. 240 million on average on the chart. Sellers are at 242 million, buyers are at 233 million. Again, this is an item that is not really something that you need to move, so let's take a quick look. Yeah, perimeter, you do have some sellers below that at 239 million, and you have some buyers. Let's see here, 233 million, very close to the Jita buy order. So for this, again, you could make a slightly better deal if you're looking to buy and use from the perimeter trade hub. Next up, we've got the skill injectors. We'll start with the chart. That could be interesting as well. Slightly going up again, so I'm seeing this as interest from alpha players in the skill injectors in order to get skills faster. A little bit up on the chart, you can see that in the last week or so, last 10 days, 5-day moving average has been above the 20-day moving average, so it's basically moving sideways, but here at the tail end we see a little bit of momentum up on the median daily prices towards 610 million. These sellers are at 627 million, buyers are at 602 million, and in the perimeter station you can actually pick one up for as little as 614 million. And you can see here that's a decent volume. So compared to skill extractors, this is a lot more in individual sell orders that are going on in the perimeter trade hub. So skill injectors and plex do seem to have found a nice niche in the perimeter trade hub right there. And for the buyers, yeah, not much difference. People are actually buying them in there as well. For how much more? 603, 604 million, just a couple more. It doesn't make that big a difference on the buyers, but for the sellers you do get a few better, slightly better deal for skill injectors and plexes at the moment. Again, with a tiny risk that if someone decides to blow it up, you're gonna be inconvenienced a little bit by the asset safety system. Okay, moving on to some minerals next. That's going to be at 950. There we go. let us start with titanium and let's see if the Rorcal changes have any impact on the mineral markets, putting this back at around 6 months like this. Yep, slight move up here from the 5-day moving average and the medium daily prices. We went pretty low here for a moment, very close to 5 ISK or just below 5 ISK even, and here now we're going back up. How substantial will this be? Well, a 33% nerf, I'm not exactly sure. Sellers are at 541, that's just a small one in a different station. 546, 547 for the sellers. A billion 3 coming in here is quite substantial, another billion in these two orders. Last 24 hours, well, maybe half a front page, a bit more than that, so not too much. On the buyer side, 533 is coming in, but only a small order. You see 2 billion at 503, but I actually think that more people will start to try and pick up titanium at like 525 to 530 in substantial volumes pretty soon as well. So titanium, the first one that shows a slight uptick in price after the announcement of the Rorcal nerf. Next up we've got pyrite here. Similarly, you have the bottom at 6 ISK, would have been good to buy last week, and we went up now towards 7 ISK on average, so too bad that it doesn't show any more details, but 719 for the sellers, 720 pretty much. Someone's still selling 1.7 billion units, that's a lot though, and the buyers are at 711, so slightly up, but I think we maybe need a few days after the patch itself, maybe even a few weeks after the patch itself, to see if there is an actual impact in the JITA market from the nerf of the Rorcal. One thing to note though, on this decrease in price here since the Ascension expansion, you have huge volumes being traded right here. That is definitely a lot more than average. And for titanium, it's not as noticeable, but you do get a bit of a bump up here in those last few days. So that's a little bit interesting. Although on lower prices, higher volumes just basically means that people have been dumping stocks like crazy. So hopefully this nerf of the Rorcal can at least stem the tide a little bit, and then what we need is a big Nosek war to create some demand, and then we could be alright. Here is Mexalon, 56 on average. That's definitely below the price that I would like to sell it. Above 60 is okay, above 70 is great. Below 60 is not really that good anymore. Again, on the median daily price, you can see a little bit of a jump back up from 55 to 57, but it's already pretty short-lived. You do notice the bigger volumes here again as well. People dumping a lot of their Mexalon. Sellers are at 57.34. Almost okay, but it's definitely on the lower end. I would be hesitant to be selling at the current price. Buyers are at 55. That gap is closing though. 336 million units, 190 million units. Yeah, this latest sell order here is, I think, going to help create a bit more of an upswing for the Mexalon market. How substantial and for how long? I think that the expansion, the next patch on Tuesday is going to give that answer. Isogen next, that one was at basically a 6-month low as well. Yeah, slight uptick here, 5-day moving average wants to cross the 20-day moving average at around 67 ISK. We went as low as 62, which is extremely cheap for Isogen. Sellers have gone up to 69 ISK almost, and buyers at 63 ISK are coming in. So yeah, slight uptick as the announcement of the Rorcal nerf came in is definitely noticeable here. So it's gonna be an interesting week next week, I think, to see what's exactly going to happen on the volumes and on the mineral prices. Next up, we've got Noxium. Let's take a look at this one. Flattening out despite higher volumes here. Pretty noticeable high volumes in the last week, pretty much. Average price 392, still below 400. That's definitely very low. 398 for the sellers, 386 for the buyers, 62 million on the seller side. Very little demand on the buyer side. This is going to be a bit of a problem, actually. I think these 62 million are going to keep Noxium from rising substantially. Again, Noxium is easily mined in any space, high sec, low sec, null sec, wormhole space, and as a result, I think it's normal that the Rorcal nerf is not hitting Noxium that much, because people are not expecting a slight decrease in nullsec supply to actually create that much of a bump in what's happening in the Noxium market itself. And I think that's correct because, well, you can still get that from HiSec very easily, and a lot of people, I think, might see this as an opportunity to do a bit more mining in HiSec rather than risk their ships in nullsec. If they see this nerf, they might consider themselves to be a bit more competitive, which is going to be true for a lot of minerals, apparently, since the HiSec minerals are going up a little bit in price. But for Noxium here, unfortunately, it's coming from so many sources that I'm not really seeing that uptick remain very substantial. It's just a unique one that is unfortunately getting hit from all sides from any change, whether it is to mining in general, mining in HiSec, mining in nullsec, or even mining in anomalies in wormhole space. All of this will impact the Noxium price, and lately it's mostly been increasing yields and not very good for Noxium. So next up for nullsec, we do have the Zydrine chart. We could try to create a bit more volatility in the chart. So you can see here a little bit of an upswing in the last week as well. Quite interesting. Going towards 1000 ISK, a few days at above 1000 ISK. Very interesting. Sellers are at 1035 ISK. Buyers are at 991. I'm a little bit interested to see what the perimeter trade hub does here. Yeah, as expected, on something that needs to be moved, you get a lot less competition from the perimeter trade hub. So you can see just a few orders. A million tree is okay in size, but 3 million here in JITA, 25 million here in JITA. So for minerals, it's definitely still JITA, and that is, I think, normal because it needs to be moved. And as a result, people are much less willing to risk that stuff in the perimeter trade hub that could be blown up. So Zydrine up a little bit in price, up in volumes as well, and the Rorcal nerf should basically increase that momentum a little bit, around 1000 ISK for Zydrine. Next up we've got Megasite. That is a bit more visible, that Megasite is clawing its way back up, so you could have bought these for 1000 ISK not that long ago, currently trading 1243. So 1240 for the sellers, 1033 for the buyers. Nice little recovery from Megasite right here. And the final spurt up here, I think the last few days, is going to be the nerf for the Rorcal. Very interesting to see such a volatility and such a swing back up in a nullsec mineral here all of a sudden. Quite nice. And finally, Morphite. Let's not forget our Tech 2 mineral. Let's see if we can get this to work a little bit. Slightly up in price as well, currently averaging 9,600 ISK, so you could have bought this for less than 9,000 ISK. I bought a few stacks of 100 million at around these prices in this period right here. And so here, if this has any momentum, again, if we see a nullsec war, this could really have a lot of momentum behind it. And so we're approaching 10,000 ISK once again on the sellers, exactly, and 8,000 ISK for the buyers. You can still do a very good deal if with the right buy order, but it's going to become less and less likely that you'll be able to pick up that very cheap Morphite below 9,000 ISK, as a little bit of an upswing in price seems to be forming here towards 10,000 at least. And again, an nullsec war then could be the trigger for much higher demand and increased prices all of a sudden. So the best investment opportunity for minerals, I think, will also turn out to be at the same time as the top for plexes, which will be around the early November start. So there we go. That's it for some minerals. Very interesting, in my opinion, that the actual impact from a Rorcal nerf, which is the nullsec mining, is most noticeable in the HiSec minerals. So I think that does give some credence to the theory that they were just mining indiscriminately in those Rorcals, right? They're not only focusing on Zydrine, only focusing on the best asteroids. Nope, they were just mining indiscriminately, and in fact they were mining so much that it was starting to spill over in the HiSec trade hubs as well. And with this nerf, I think that we could see a bit more of a balanced situation in ILSEC, then becoming basically self-reliant for a big part, but not spilling so much over that they're actually impacting the HiSec economy as much as they were doing. So we'll see if that pans out in the next few weeks. Next up, we've got PI that is at 20 minutes. 20.00. That's pretty good. Let's take a look at these. So a lot of them were a little bit under pressure from a very high summer. Construction blocks actually also knew a late increase in price here in October. So a couple of tops here at around 15,000 ISK, an even bigger top at 17,000 throughout the summer, and currently averaging 12,000 ISK. On the 1 year chart, you can see we're right at the average price for construction blocks. You can also see that we come from a high point, so there is a little bit of pressure, and the supply here is pretty intense. Look at that full front page of new construction blocks coming in, and this is basically the price you're paying for higher activity. A lot of people have access to decent PI planets in general, so once they come back, that's one of the first things that they'll drop to the market for some liquid ISK. It is all the PI that they have going and have saved up, which in this case, a little bit of pressure on the construction blocks. I think if activity keeps up, we could be going higher. If activity drops off or levels off a little bit, we could be in for average prices for a while on these construction blocks. Consumer electronics next, again very similar pattern here, strong summer with high points of around 16,000 ISK, a little bit more than that even. Current average is 12,000 ISK. On the 1 year chart you can see again probably slightly above average or just at average prices. Increased volumes for a decreased price, once again indicating very high supply coming in after the November expansion. A little bit of a pullback is good to see here to 12,000 ISK. It's still okay to sell, but you're right at the averages, and we can also see that that party is ending, as in the last few days median daily prices are actually on the way back down again. I'm reading this as incoming pressure, and we could be heading back for 11,000 ISK before you know it on consumer electronics. Coolants are next. Coolants were a little bit late to the party with a high point in September at 15,000 ISK, currently trading for 11,000 ISK. If we're looking at the 1 year chart, we are again right at the average from 6 months ago. So overall, it's okay to sell, but you're not making especially good money. If you want to gamble on another increase in price later down the line, then at the moment it's probably better to just hold on to some of them, especially here when you have dips to 10,000 ISK as the median daily price. That is starting to get just below average prices. Again, a slight increase in price in the last few days, which is after a serious decrease in price though to 10,000 ISK. So some of these little dips right here are a little bit below average then. Well, maybe not actually. It's not as noticeable on the 1 year chart here, but of course these median daily prices are a little bit too low for comfort. Less than 10,000 ISK, that's quite some pressure, and it's normal at that point that some investors come in and push the price up to a more reasonable 11,000 ISK. But it's okay to sell, but it's definitely not as good as what we could do through the summer or in September for coolants. Enriched uranium next. If the chart wants to load, it does. Good. Once again, we can see this pattern. Enriched uranium high point in August, 17,000 ISK, then a very strong September as well, 17,000 ISK or even more than that. And since then we can see the pressure, especially in November. We see a second leg down. Current daily average price is 13,000 ISK, and 5-day moving average, 20-day moving average crossing each other. We don't even notice the really big volumes or anything like that. So this is set to either continue on slowly, or maybe this is trying to form a bit of a bottom at this price range, which is around the average. Again, if you look at the entire 1 year price chart, you're above that a little bit here, then you're below that here, and here at the very start. Then we've got a very strong summer. So these current prices, 13,000 ISK for enriched uranium, again, not bad, not great. You can sell if you expect a better sell opportunity and you have the patience for it. You can also try to stock up on these goods as well. Fresh supply. It's almost a full front page right here in the last 24 hours, everything above that. It's quite significant. Again, I think it shows more activity, more PI stuff being brought to the market. And not exactly more demand, especially for fuel related PI stuff, because as I said, I expect actual demand for fuel to decrease as people are moving away from their individual bosses into public engineering complexes and citadels. Mechanical parts next. The one anomaly here where we had an actually a decently average to weak summer here, you can see we're on the lower end, has actually increased towards the Citadel expansion. Bit of hesitation to be spotted here in December, but back up to a high point of 11,500 ISK. So it's not a high point of 17,000, 16,000 as some of the others, because you can make mechanical parts on the very common barren planets very easily. It's an easily producible product, so at the moment we're well above average. This is a good time to sell your mechanical parts. And the one anomaly so far in the PI materials that actually is at a high point at the moment after the Citadel expansion. So a lot of people apparently are in need of mechanical parts. You can see that supply is lacking a little bit as well. So in the last 24 hours, only 5 orders coming in, a substantial one at 161,000. But again, pretty good prices historically speaking for the mechanical parts. Could be interesting to touch on this as well from the perimeter hub perspective. There we go again, very few orders here, just 5 of them in perimeter and 1 in Vassala, which is 11 jumps away, and they're not even competing in price, as you can see. So stuff that needs to be moved is generally still happening in the Jita station. But for plex, I absolutely agree, I should check every day to see what's happening in the perimeter hub, because it is a substantial jump down in price for the sellers, a decent jump up in price for the buyers, and the volumes are surprisingly high there, compared especially to stuff like the mechanical parts and other goods. Next up, let's take a look at some oxygen. That's back to the normal pattern, pretty strong September and summer. High points of around 545 ISK, current daily price is 414, definitely on some pressure. 20-day moving average, you can see here the decline in price from 500 ISK to the current less than that. 434 for the sellers, 360 for the buyers, very little demand for oxygen at the moment. Again, fuel related, I think it's part of the problem. You can see that the volumes are up a little bit as well here and there, which I think just means more supply as well. We're below average for oxygen. I personally think that you should not be selling all your stocks at the moment of this particular good. Next up, we've got robotics. Let's get some more volatility in the chart. And again here, strong summer, a little bit of a bump up in September as well. 110,000 ISK was definitely possible, and here after November we can see the pressure coming in down to 93,000 ISK. Volumes a little bit higher as well, so increased supply is showing up. The one difference from most of the other ones, if you look at the full 1 year chart, we're still a bit above average. It's still an okay price to sell your robotics at, 95,000 ISK, buyers at 91,000 ISK. Pretty small margin right here. Definitely still a decent time to sell robotics, but the good times from the summer are definitely over, and I think I'm not wrong with the higher activity, higher demand, higher supply theory that I've got going here at the moment for most of the PI materials. Luckily, I would say 90% of them still seem to be in a pretty good spot to try to sell. Another exception, rocket fuels, just like our mechanical parts, is actually doing pretty well at the moment. 12,000, 13,000. The chart is a little bit strange with the median daily prices all over the place, so I think that this could be it could be better to focus on a 5-day moving average for this particular one, but even here you can see that we're at a pretty high point. Let's say 12.6. Yeah, 13,000 ISK almost for the sellers, 12,000 for the buyers. Lack of supply is pretty obvious at the moment for rocket fuel. This is another good one to make and bring to the market if you want slightly better prices than what you usually get. Rocket fuel seems to be doing quite alright, although yeah, it's really strange to have these median daily prices jump like that in a very volatile way. Also much more stable through August, September here than some of the other ones. It's not as noticeable a pattern as in most of the other ones. Self-harmonizing power core. So this advanced stuff costs quite a little bit more. We can see here the June decline after the Citadel expansion to a bottom of around 2 million ISK. Then a bit more demand here in preparation, I think, for the Ascension expansion and the engineering complexes. We went up to 3 million, but now the decline is back on 2.2, 2.4 million. Definitely possible. 2.4 for the sellers, 2.3 for the buyers. They're actually coming in with a decent amount of demand. Slightly above average still, but I think that the pressure is just going to continue. And unless CCP announces the next set of structures that will require these advanced PI materials as well, like the drilling rigs, I think that this is set to stay under pressure substantially as people get their engineering complexes going. They won't need all that extra anymore. And this is, increased supply is going to basically drop the price down as demand drops off as well, I think. Why am I saying this? Because I did from CCP Seagull's video, what I got basically is that CCP at the moment is in analysis modus. So more in maintenance, trying to make sure that nothing is completely broken for the alpha clones, by the alpha clones, for the engineering complex, for all of the new structures. They're making sure that everything is working properly. I think that's definitely the right thing to do, but that also means that we should not expect too much news on the drilling rigs or the next set of structures all too soon, which I think will give the advanced PI material market a little bit of a breather, and thus as demand will decrease, I think that will actually go back to more normal prices, maybe back towards 2 million for the self-harmonizing power cores. It'll take some time, but I think it can definitely happen. Superconductors next. That one is actually also working on a pretty strong end of the year here. 16,000 is definitely much better than average, and this on increased volumes is indicative, I think, of increased demand, substantial increased demand, and this after a very weak end of the summer here. August, September, pretty low point. If we look at that on the chart, it's going to be around here, as you can see, just at the average price. Yeah, around that before the Citadel expansion, which is here in May. We could maybe quickly take that one with us as well. So here we have the Citadel expansion. Here we have the increased price as people apparently need a lot of superconductors, maybe for their engineering complexes. Not bad to move to some storm planets and try to make some superconductors and sell them. Another winner in PI. What I'm liking here is that it's not a completely uniform picture. We actually have some PI materials that you could try to switch to for a better price, and some of the others are showing that pattern of general increased activity, increased supply and lower prices. Most of those though are probably related to fuel. Next up, the test cultures. Again, with a not so strong September, although we did jump back up towards 10,000 ISK, we're currently selling for 12,000 ISK. If we look at the entire 1 year chart, we're probably a little bit above average, but not by all that much. We definitely have had a much stronger, what was it, May, June here after the Citadel expansion. So this increase in price is definitely okay. It's a good time to sell off your test cultures. Try to sell for 12,400 is, well, 12,200 maybe, and then 10,300 for the buyers. It's definitely better than average, but still not by all that much because of this dip here in August to 6,500 is, that's quite punishing, pretty low. Here we can also see very bottom of the 1 year chart. So it looks really good. It's probably a little bit less good than what it actually looks like here on the 6-month chart, because this point here is actually close to a 6-month or even a 1 year low point as well. So we recovered. It's nice for test cultures, but at the moment we're just above average, not really at the best possible price just yet. Still, if I was a producer of test cultures, I would not hesitate to dump them on the market right now. Wetware mainframes next. Let's see what we can see here. Decrease in price after the Citadel expansion. So I'm hoping that that pattern repeats itself here. Again, the bump up in October in preparation for the Ascension expansion. And now here the slight hesitation. 20-day moving average slightly going down here from 2.9 million down to 2.8 million. Fresh supply could be a strong indication. Not that much. That's a bit of a surprise. 2.9 million to 2.9.5 million for the sellers, 2.7 million for the buyers. Perimeter impact very limited, a few sell orders, but that's about it. Okay, so that's some PI right there. A couple of pretty good ones, in my opinion, that you can actually make on a single planet. I think those could be interesting. And my expectation for the advanced PI materials is actually that as demand decreases, these will also go down in price in a similar pattern to what we've seen after the Citadel expansion right here. Decrease in price towards the bottom, 2.25 million, slight margin above what we had like a year ago. Maybe I should quickly grab a 1-year chart. So this is where we come from, right? 2 million, 2.10 million. Then we had the Citadel expansion, but as demand decreased, we decreased in price. 2.35 million. Here we have an uptick in price towards the Ascension expansion, and now I think we'll see a decrease in price as well, perhaps even as low as the previous low point of 2 million, because a lot of people are producing these advanced PI materials. They've been so good for so long that we could actually end up in an oversupply situation in general, I think, for these. That's my expectation at least. All right, next up, some Tech 1 ships, 36 minutes. There we go. And I'm still keeping the same ones. I want to check on the theory that at some point alpha characters are going to start moving into destroyers, and that we should see an impact on volumes and price there. Caracal still not showing up right here. We're still at a pretty low point for Caracal, considering the entire 6-month chart here at around 10.7 million. What I think could be happening here is that producers jump the gun a little bit. It makes sense to go for Caracals as an alpha doctrine for the Caldari alphas, for nullsec, for fleet fights, for things like that. But it's gonna take a little bit of time for those alpha characters to actually get into these Caracals, get all the supporting skills for that. You pretty much want a fully trained alpha character for a fleet doctrine Caracal, and as a result, I think what may be happening is that we're oversupplied a little bit because the demand just isn't there yet, and as a result, we're definitely at a 6-month low price range at the moment of 10.7 million on average. Slightly higher volumes, that is true. Next up, we've got the Coercer. This is a standard destroyer, and I find this very interesting. Look, in the last few days, increased volume spikes, increasing price, trying to do it. It's going to be interesting to see if this has some momentum by next week, to be honest. If we can actually go back up from 1.23 million towards a 1.6 million, which was probably a speculative bubble on the alpha clones as well. But if we could go up on higher volumes, then it could be a first indication of alpha clones moving into destroyers substantially. Very nice to see this volume, these volume spikes right here, and then the potential for the price to go up right there. Next up, we've got the Dominix. A battleship, of course, is not going to be alpha clone material, but what we can see here is that battleships are still not in the meta all too much, although from the M-O battle we did see Typhoon fleets, Macarel fleets and things like that. But for the Dominix, nope, it's just not happening. 180 million on average is supply coming in. Let's take a look. Nope, hardly any supply coming in at 185 million, and the buyers are at 165. It's just not the time for battleships at the moment. That market is a little bit dead in the water, which makes for, well, a very slow and steady decline in price to the current price range. Next up, we've got the Merlin here. That is, of course, gonna be a pretty popular alpha clone frigate. Oh, huge volume spike here, 3,400 being sold in a single day. Must mean some sort of a Merlin fleet, I think, from an OSSE group. Average prices here still holding at 350,000 ISK, bottoms at 270. But here this is also actually 380,000 ISK. So 323 for the sellers, 280 for the buyers. Quite interesting. We were doing quite alright a few weeks ago on higher than average prices, at least compared to the months before that. But here, average price, yeah, 500,000, but that's because of this one price spike. So we can see the increased interest in the Merlin, but it's not really converting to a stronger or much higher price that is sustainable, or that is sustained for a long period. There is definitely some hesitation in the market here to keep paying a premium for the Merlin. This one big volume spike here, I think, is an indication of a big Gnostic group buying up a whole Merlin fleet for their alpha characters. It would make sense a couple of days ago if a big group wants to get their alpha characters in M-O, and as a result, I find it interesting because it confirms that basically alpha characters are not yet ready to go into the cruiser doctrines, and so the Gnostic groups actually still have to invest in the frigates at the moment mostly. Next up here we get the Oracle battle cruiser. Not much to say here, basically going for 76 million, which is a little bit below average if you look at the entire 1 year price chart. Supply demand, we get a little bit too much supply coming in the last few days. Yeah, 18, 22, 16, competing with each other towards 78.5 million. Bars are at 71 million, very few buy orders. It's again not exactly the Oracle's time to shine. If we have a big Gnostic war, all of this could change, of course. Raven next, despite, just like the Dominics, being a really good PvE battleship, interest just isn't there. 170 million, 1 year, 6-month low, 1 year low price here at the moment for the Raven. Supply, despite that, still coming in, couple more coming in here at 173 million. Buyers at 157. If you want a couple of cheap Ravens, you can maybe try to buy these, because this is getting pretty ridiculous. Let's hope that at some point CCP can bring the battleships back in the meta a little bit. Thrasher could be interesting. Yeah, and it is. Increased volumes are still here, but the price, look at that, we had a jump up, but it's already recovering back to 1.23 million. So this is going to be a bit of a bubble story, I think, these alpha clone prices for Tech 1 ships. I guess it's just too easy to produce them. Trash scoring for 1,100,000, buyers are just below 1 million ISK. And so what we can see here at the tail end, increase in price on increased volumes, but industrial response can more than fill the gap, and maybe has even overreacted a little bit with average prices today at 1 million. If this has too much momentum, we could be in for a bit of volatility. That is true as well, but at the moment what I'm reading is that increased volumes are there, and they've moved to mostly frigates and destroyers at the moment, but these do not translate into a substantial premium on the price itself. Production is just too strong here, and filling the gaps too easily. Tornado next, we do see some increased volumes, probably for either some fleets or some suicide ganking, and despite that, daily prices are going down to 67 million for Tornado. Very affordable, no demand, 65 million for the sellers. I guess people would rather gank in catalysts. Next up here we get the Tristan. Here again you do see the increased volumes from the alpha clones. You saw the increase in price going up towards 700,000 ISK almost, but now here we're going back down to 540,000 ISK on the 1 year chart. Nope, actually around where we started a year ago. So again, the premium price just cannot be sustained for a long time. Producers spot that opportunity. What, people are selling Tristans for 600,000-700,000 ISK. Let's bring 488 of them. That's of course going to bring the price back down substantially. Maybe even crash the price below its usual average if people go completely crazy on this opportunity from the alpha clones. So it could translate into more volatility as well, as alpha clone, if alpha clone demand does stay strong, they actually use them and lose them in nullsec, lowsec and things like that. Frigates are perfect for that, of course. Faction warfare as well. CCP Fozzy mentioned that we have the most people enrolled in faction warfare ever at the moment. What's most popular in faction warfare? cheap frigates such as the Tristan, and thus if big fights happen there, maybe we can see some swings in this price. But at the moment the pattern is clear. We do have higher volumes, but industrialists have jumped on the increase in price already and have basically squashed their own margins under increased supply. The Venture next, very similar story. Man, it's definitely happening across the frigate market. Increased volumes right here due to the alpha clones coming in. Increased price up to a nice 420,000 ISK. But what do we see then? Supply just coming in with 1200, 135, just crashing the entire markets, causing, even filling up a lot of this demand here on the buyer side, and thus here now crashing the price down to average price 250,000. This is yeah, definitely a bit of an overreaction from the production guys. You're making too much of these alpha clone specific ships at the moment, causing these prices to go down substantially. This is in fact below its normal average. We're getting cheaper ventures for the alpha clones than almost ever before. Next up, the Vexor. It's a cruiser. Probably could become a very popular cruiser with alpha clones as well. We do see slightly increased volumes, but we don't see increased prices just yet. Again, I'm seeing this as people overreacting, people expecting, well, Vexor could also be a very important doctrine for the Galente alpha clones. Does make sense, but the alpha clones just aren't ready for that yet. They're having fun in their frigates and their destroyers at the moment, and thus we get this pattern of lower prices despite increased volumes, just much more being produced than being used at the moment. I am a little bit curious, so I'm going to quickly take the Catalyst as well. Galente Catalyst. Let's see what that one is doing. Because if you would get alpha clones for ganking, what you would see is increased volumes, which we do, but we see the same pattern again, right? 1.1 million, 1.2 million, up in price to 1.3 million, a little bit of a premium, but here after a couple of weeks we're going back down to 1.2 million. On supply here, 132,000 of them being brought right here, trying to sell at 2 million, just not gonna work. Demand is a little bit stronger in the Catalyst, 1.1 million people are willing to buy it, but you see the increased volumes, you see the premium in price trying to be formed, and then you see unfortunately that too much is being produced, and thus we go back down in price. Very interesting to see this pattern show up now in the frigates and in the destroyers. I personally thought that maybe we would be able to command some sort of premium as alpha clones kept flying these specific categories of ships, but it's just not really happening. Alright, moving on to Tech 2, 4725. There we go. We're just gonna touch on these, honestly, stick to the charts unless something really drastic is to be noted here. We are not in a major nullsec war. We would really need that, I think, if we want to see some real movements in the Tech 2 market. Basilisk did come to a 6-month low in the last week or so, but it's already recovering back to around 200 million on average for the Basilisk, which is, well, right where you would expect the average to be. So this is not going to make or you a lot of money. Here is the broadsword, again pretty stable, although going down, a general downtrend for the broadsword in the last 6 months here. 230 million. If you want to try to buy a couple of cheap ones on the buyer side of things, you could try, but still 223 is also today's average. So that basically means that people are just willing to sell straight to the buy orders, and they don't expect a big increase in price here all of a sudden. Next up here, the Cerberus, also slightly under pressure. Well, no, basically back on the price we had 6 months ago, and there's not much to say. We did go to a slight dip of 200 million here on the daily averages. Just about 10 days ago, maybe a bit more than that. We're slowly climbing back out of that towards 210 million. But really on this type of volatility, zero is to be made, unfortunately. The Damnation command ship could be slightly interesting, and it is here. Jump up in price towards 400 million, and now a slight downtrend to 380. So this would have been an opportunity. You could have bought these for 333 million, something like that. Then going up to 400 million, there's definitely a bit of a trade to be had there. But unfortunately, I would say that this is just CCP related. It's the boost mechanics. The market still needed a little bit of time to come to the right price range. And after this, I think the Damnation is going to start moving in the same pattern as most of the others. Here is the Hound next. That could be slightly more interesting because we did see a bottom form here at 18 million with average price of as low as 16 million, and here now 24 million. This is a substantial little spike. Whoops, we should actually go like that because they built upon this. All right, current price 29 million for the sellers, 23 million for the buyers. You could have easily picked up Hounds a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a bit over a month ago, for 18 million on the buyer side of things, very, very easily. So this is good news in my opinion, the first sign of some volatility back into this market, and it's coming from the smallest one, the frigates, the stealth bombers. This is of course stuff that is often flown in big fleets and lost because people are willing to do that at this price. Very interesting. I might have to switch back to my good old pattern where I basically checked stealth bombers and the logistics ships. So this is good. This is good in my opinion. This increase in price to 29 million, 10 million on 18 million purchases, that is definitely something that can make you some money. So let's hope that this pattern can repeat itself, or that we can spot that into a few of the other stealth bombers. I think I'm going to change back to my classical pattern. Here's the Kronos, of course, much smaller market, maybe 15 a day or something like that. Currently going for 1.2 billion. Are you going to make trade money on this one? Well, if you're feeling very risky, you can try to do so. Buyers are at 1,130,000 for one, 1,000,001. Honestly, you're not gonna pick up a cheap Kronos at the moment, so I would say no. Raptor next. Let's take a look at that. Right here, bottom 23 million, going up to 27 million. Yeah, almost trade-worthy, this decrease and increase in price. Sellers 28 million, we're empty of those here. Are we doing better in the perimeter station? Something like that? Not really. So, okay, Raptor, if you bought a few cheap ones on these low points of less than 23 million on average, then maybe at the moment you can try to make a little bit of money on that. Again, it's in a frigate. Let's hope that this pattern does continue. Here is the Saber next. Interdictor, of course, could also be an interesting one because these are front line. They're there in the big Gnostic fights to try and keep people from getting off the field. So they're very important. They're also primaried a lot, which is why we get this nice little jump from 47 million to 57 million. And now we are going back down to 49 million. Buyers are at 46. Yeah, some volatility back here for the interdictors as well. The Stork next, command destroyer, a bit calmer seas here in the end. 60 million, maybe also a little bit too expensive to say, well, we're gonna grab 100 Storks and gonna lose them, which you could do with stealth bombers. And then finally here the Widow, same pattern pretty much I would say as the Kronos. Yeah. No, actually not. Widow coming from a little bit of a dip to a low point of 900 million, currently selling for 1 billion, and you can also have price ranges of 1.1 billion. So can you make trades on that? I think on volumes of maybe 12, 13 a day, it's very, very tricky. So I think for next week, I'm going to make this change in the Tech 2 market. We're going to switch this down to stealth bombers. The interceptors I think could be interesting as well. Maybe the dictors, and then maybe a couple of logistic ships as well, because those can sometimes show some interesting patterns. I'm not sure about those. There's still cruisers that are pretty expensive. This is the Basilisk, and not much to say here. But at least the Hound here is showing us something pretty damn interesting worthy of note, and so stealth bombers are coming back on my radar with this. Let's switch it up a little bit for the Tech 2 market for next week, take a bit more of a closer look at some of the smaller ships. Next up, the Tech 3 market, 54.15 could be good. Let's take a look at what's happening here. Confessor 6-month low, slowing down at 34 million ISK. Almost half a front page of fresh supply, still 69 of them coming in here, is going to keep the Confessor from going up in price substantially. The question is, do you think at some point we may see a big Nosek war, Confessor fleets zooming in there despite the nerfs? That this is probably a buy opportunity. Do you think that the nerfs were so substantial that basically they've the Confessor is out of the meta enough that we're not going to see this as a bottom? Then of course stay away from it. Next up we've got the Hecate here. Also again slowing down now at 41 million ISK, 40.5 for the sellers, 38 million. Fresh supply, yeah, of course, that's what's going to happen then. People are not going to bring that many Confessors to the market anymore if they can bring Hecates at 41 million. And thus we get this full front page, 182 right here, that is going to continue to put some pressure on the Hecate price to go down. Next up, let's take a look at the Jackdaw. Obviously from this chart also under pressure. 36 million at the moment, fresh supply. Yeah, half a front page, pretty much in line with the Confessor. So the Hecate is still the strongest one. And then finally we've got the Zwepel. Yeah, of course also hit pretty hard by the nerf bat. 33 million for Zwepels at the moment. And despite that, that's the craziest part I think, still a full page of fresh supply, including 300 of them being brought just a few hours ago. Yeah, that's the Zwepel being hit pretty hard. I think a lot of people are maybe dumping some of their huge stocks of these because they're expecting these not to be flown anymore in big fleet fights and things like that. This could be a buy opportunity, but of course, considering what the rest of the market is saying, it's slightly risky as well. Let's take a look at the cruisers next. Here is the Legion, slightly under pressure as well, 140 million. What's this? 170. Oh, that's for the volumes. All right. 140 million, something like that. 143 million fresh supply, almost a full front page, including 21. And demand is drying up for these Legions. So are we seeing a buy opportunity form? Maybe. We're definitely below the average price. But again, you would need something major to happen in Nosek, I think, for this to be jump started. Next up here we've got the Loki, very similar pattern as well, in fact very sharp decline to a low point of 110 million. Yeah, that of course did get picked up with some increased volumes to bring the price up to 120 million. 127 for the sellers, 113 for the buyers. I'm still seeing this as if you want some Lokis to fly yourself, go and buy them now on the buy orders. If you want to risk an investment, then this should definitely show you that we are pretty damn low for the Loki at the moment, and it could be worth it to invest a little bit in this one. I think it's less risky than some of the destroyers. Next up here we've got the Proteus. If the chart wants to load, there we go. Thank you. Obviously also under pressure, heading for 150 million. 6-month low, not just yet. What are the new supply? Not that much. Here we do have around 25, 30, no, maybe even more than 30 of them in the last 24 hours, but it's not completely crazy. It's just lack of demand at the moment that is pushing the price down. So again, do you know that an Nosek war is going to happen? This could actually be an okay time to jump in on some buy orders for the Proteus. And then next up here we've got the Tengu, that's actually apparently doing a little bit better. Yeah, managing to hold on to 150 million after decreasing in price to a little bit less than that. So currently the sellers are at 152, buyers again drying up 142 million. It's not as good, I would say, as potentially the Legion right here at a pretty low point, or the Proteus. But yeah, Tengu of course, very popular ship, and so if you want to invest in some buy orders on this one. 443, 144. Don't go crazy in the volumes. I think you can pick up some cheap Tengus as well. And again, you're dependent on something major to happen, like a big war, but you would be ready with your Tech 3 investment at that point as well. For your consideration, in general, Tech 3 market under pressure since the nerfs of some of the destroyers. I guess supply doesn't really know where to switch to at the moment. And then next, for the extra material, we are at let's see, 59.30. Okay, had to find the clock on the OBS client there for a moment. We're going to take a look at faction battleships. Since we saw a lot of them in the MO battle, I think it's worth it to take a look at these faction battleships. We'll start with Navy. I don't expect to see too much drastic here. I haven't really seen a lot of Navy Apocalypse fleets around, for instance. So this basically is a pretty flat chart at around 380 million ISK, a little bit above that, a little bit below that. Volume-wise, nothing too drastic to report. And we're just going from below the average price to slightly above the average price. Not much to say here. Armageddon Navy issue, that is very, very flat as well. 400 million. Not much to say here. Volumes abysmal, very low. Just battleships not really in the meta. Dominic's Navy issue, new one lovely spike up to 620 million, averaging maybe 450, 460. We are already back down towards that at 480 at the moment. It's slightly better than average, but basically only because we're recovering from a single price spike here. Nothing too drastic. Megatron Navy issue, in line with my expectation. Yeah, starting at 400 million, ending at 410 million. A bit below that, a bit above that on these price points here. Just, yeah, not much to say. Low volumes as well. Pretty stable market. Again, showing that the battleship meta is not what's happening at the moment. Raven Navy issue, basically under pressure constantly over the last 6 months. Starts at around 540 million, ends at around 420 million. Substantial decrease in price. This could be a faction warfare influence, right? If it basically becomes cheaper for Raven Navy issue blueprints to be bought in the store because of, not exactly sure how it works. Is it a high index or a low index? Not exactly sure, but I think this is an indication of Kaldari faction warfare going probably very well, I think. Getting lots of loyalty points, just getting lots of Raven Navy issues. Volumes here slightly better than most of the others. Slightly higher as well on the decreased price. This again indicating increased supply as well. There's not that much to say about this though. Scorpion Navy issue next. Yep, showing the same pattern here. Increased volumes, slightly decreasing in price to 430. Starts at around 500 million. Again, pretty good for the Kaldari faction warfare stuff. Tempest fleet issue, not much to say. 270 million on average. Bit of a dip right here. That's pretty strange. 210. Maybe a big player cashing out or something like that. But nothing too drastic. Typhoon fleet issue, pretty stable as well. 380, 360 million maybe. We're right at the higher point at the moment, but again, low volumes, so not much to report on this one. What could be more interesting could be the pirate faction battleships. The Bargists, I don't think that we see only Bargist fleets that often, so these start at around 660 million and at around 650 million, so not that much to say. 800 million one peak, couple of peaks here though, up to 800 million. So that does make it a little bit more interesting for investments potentially. You see some volatility, but the volumes are not high enough to really make all of that much of a dent. This one could be more interesting though, Macarial, and unfortunately it's not. So that is very interesting to me and quite a surprise. I'm almost interested. Yeah, actually pretty low price, starts at 360. Ends at 330 million. Macarial fleet very much in the meta at the moment in Nullsec. We see those used and lost quite often. Is this a perimeter trick? No, it's not. You can see here very few perimeter sell orders. What this basically means is that Macarial fleets in Nullsec, to me it means that these are mostly in-house builds. People grind for those and create them, keep them within their alliances. They don't go through the trade hubs. Very interesting, a little bit unexpected in my book. I thought maybe we would see a bit of an impact. The Nestor next, starts, well, we could say start at 700 million, but ends at 550 million. Definitely down in price substantially, as basically more people find their way to the Nestor for production from Sisters of Eve loyalty points. This is going down. Could also be project discovery, maybe constantly bringing in a stream of loyalty points as well. Definitely at a low point for the Nestor at the moment. Nightmare next. We saw a few Nightmare fleets as well. Unfortunately, again a bit under the price. We do see increased volumes, maybe a couple of purchases happening here and there on the low price point of 280 million, but we're not seeing all too direct correlation between the Nightmare prices and their popularity of us seeing them in Nullsec in the MO fight and in some other fights as well. Rattlesnake Victory Edition, that's just going to be something that's a little bit outside of the normal range. Yeah, going for almost 3 billion. Couple being traded now and then, but it's not really a typical pirate faction battleship. Here is the Balgorn, also under pressure at the moment, going for 250 million. Is that right? Sellers are at 251, 256 million. So I would say decently cheap Balgorns at the moment as well. Rattlesnake next, very popular PvE ship, also under pressure. Look at that, going down to 360 million. Probably means that in Nullsec people are ratting up a storm, getting a lot of these blueprints in the process. Vindicator, also below average at 410, starts at around 450. A few bumps as well, but other than that, there's really not all that much to report in the pirate faction battleships. To my surprise, I thought we'd see maybe an increase in price here in the Macarial, as maybe a couple of fleets would have to be replaced after a few of the CO2 versus PL NC fights happened. But nope, looks like they basically have all of their stocks ready, and that everything is always already replaced when you see it being blown up in the big Nullsec fights at the moment, to my surprise. But alright, it's all part of Eve Talk. That's what's happening in the market, and that's going to be it for this one as well. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and as always, I will see you next time.